everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mary Grace Spills the Tea, where I talk about all the news related to American Girl. Before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below to be notified when I have new updates on new American Girl releases. And also, make sure to follow my Instagram for even more updates. Now, I got my information from Instagram. I posted on my Instagram story that I was looking for people to share what they knew or some rumors that were going around about the 1920s girl, and you guys did not disappoint. Before we get any further, I just want to shout out my Instagram. So, I post very actively on my Instagram. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and show you what I do. So as you can see, I do photo recreations. I do photo shoots and behind the scene videos of me making videos, which is kind of meta if you think about it. I'm posting a video about how I make videos, which is strange. And then I'm talking about it in this video. But anyways, here's some of my photography. I post updates on American Girl thrift finds. I found Mary Grace Cecile's bed at a thrift store. Very exciting. If you want to see some cool doll photos, make sure to go over to my Instagram, which is just.dream.studios, with the link in the description box below. And without further ado, let's get into the rumors surrounding the new 1920s doll coming from American Girl this fall. Now, the user that sent me this information goes by the username Elizabeth Purcell. So thank you for sending me some links for some of the rumors surrounding the girl year for the 1920s that will be coming out later this fall. So before we get started, a little background knowledge. Someone found out that American Girl trademarked the name Estelle and later trademarked the name Claudie, or Mattel trademarked these names. And why this is important is that when Mattel trademarks certain names, it usually, not always though, means that they're going to release a new doll or character with that name. However, there's been a few times in the past when names have been trademarked and they have never turned into a doll. I can't think of any examples now, but it does happen. So just because they trademark a name doesn't mean it's actually going to be in use. And essentially what a trademark is, or a copyright, I'm not a huge expert on this, but essentially what it means is that nobody else would be allowed to use that name when they're trying to sell a product. I'm going to read what this Redditor, I think that's what they're called. I think they're called Redditors on Reddit, but I'm not too sure. I don't use Reddit. But this person posted, so in another post, I saw some comments that the rumored 1920s doll named Estelle was into archaeology and had curly blonde hair that was later repurposed into the sparkling ballerina doll. And instead, the 1920s doll will be Claudie and be a doll of color. And how much of Estelle's items apparently, and have much of Estelle's items. Oh, I get it. I understand what it means now. Apparently, she was going to be an archaeologist. I mean, I have no problem with them changing another boring white, blue-eyed doll to a doll of color, especially since the sparkling ballerina doll was essentially number 22 with curly hair. But where did everyone get this information? Is it just speculation? Personally, I think Claudie had a potentially being an archaeologist is a very cool idea. Now, I wanted to share my opinion, because if you've followed this show for a while, you know that I like to share my opinion about these releases. There's plenty of other YouTubers on here who just state the facts about rumors, but I really like to share how I feel. Now, a little background for me, I am currently in my last year of anthropology at university. Anthropology essentially is the study of people. And there's 4 main categories with anthropology. There's cultural anthropology, there's linguistics, there's biological anthropology, which is like studying bones, and then there's archaeology, which is basically digging stuff out of the dirt to figure out what happened in the past. Now, why this doll is important to me is that she would be an Egyptologist, which means somebody who studies Egypt or Egypt's past. And this is a very big deal because in the 1920s, Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun, which is a very famous Egyptian pharaoh, which is essentially an Egyptian king. I actually am writing my thesis paper, which is in simple terms like a book that you have to write when you graduate university. So I'm writing like 100 pages about women in ancient Egypt and the interpretations, and I talk a little bit about the period in the Victorian era to the 1920s where people went through something called Egypt mania. Now, Egypt mania was a period in the 1920s after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb where people were obsessed with Egypt. You can kind of see it in movies like The Great Gatsby, where they have styles that are inspired by Egypt, like Art Deco is very much like Egyptian inspired. But Egypt was very, very popular at this time. And of course, I'm writing my thesis paper on Egypt, so I've heard a lot about Egypt mania and the 1920s. I never put two and two together because, it feels very niche that other people would, I wouldn't think that other people associate the 1920s with Egypt just because I would, but it's very cool that they considered doing this. From a university perspective, it would be, a little bit of praising colonization because a lot of what people did in the 1920s when it came to, they weren't very respectful when they were collecting the artifacts from these tombs. And that is a whole topic for a different video, but I could see that American Girl wouldn't give the topic justice because it's a very complex topic. So even though they might have scrapped what the doll looked like and set her during the Harlem Renaissance, I don't necessarily see how that would 100% make it not about archaeology. She could still be a doll of color and have Egyptian ancestry. In fact, that would make a lot of sense for her to be a doll of color and to come from Egypt. So I definitely think that this doesn't mean that she won't be an archaeologist, but that might take away from the fact that she's from the Harlem Renaissance. But I might be wrong in this, but usually when I associate the Harlem Renaissance, I think of music and theater. And for those of you who don't know what the Harlem Renaissance is, it's a time in vibrant Black history in New York I associate it with music and theater and that sort of thing. And I wonder how they're going to differentiate that from Melody, because Melody's story is heavily influenced by music. And I really don't want her to be a cardboard copy of Melody in the 1920s. I really hope that they're putting a lot of thought into Claudie and not just, slapping her together, making her like other characters, making her a mismatch. Just kind of the problem that people, are speculating that might be happening with Claudie. So recently, American Girl retired number 44, I think. Let me just pull up an image to see if I am getting the number right. So the number that I was thinking was Truly Me 58. So recently this doll was retired from American Girl. And people were starting to speculate that she might be Claudie. So she might have been retired from the Truly Me line, but she's going to be re-released as the 1920s doll. And of course, that got some people upset. And as I talked about in my previous 1920s Girl of the Year video, if this were to happen, this would be another repeat of Gabriella. But the concept for a 1920s doll during the Harlem Renaissance is not a new one. In fact, before Addie came out in the 1990s, it was considered that the first doll of color in the American Girl line should be a doll from the Harlem Renaissance or the 1960s. However, it was decided it would be best to have a doll about slavery, considering a lot of the issues that the Black community faces in the United States of America stem from slavery. So Claudie, according to this person, Claudie was a trademark last year, and American Girl abandoned Estelle trademark last fall. Oh, so they don't own the Estelle trademark anymore. AG clearly didn't want to make another white blonde classic mold doll that supposedly Estelle was replacing Kit, which makes sense because Kit and Estelle would be, very close to each other and they would have similar appearance-wise. So that makes sense. Also, Harlem Renaissance is well known. Not super depressing time in Black history, but also kind of have fancy dresses and things that have widespread appeal. Estelle was supposed to come out before Courtney, but AG flipped them because they wanted to release the surefire hit. She was pretty far along in production. I suspect they will reuse anything they can in Claudie's collection. Egypt was popular in the US in the 1920s. King Tut's tomb was discovered in 1922, as I mentioned before. But thinking more like clothing items, I don't see them shoehorning the Egypt stuff in Claudie's collection. There have been posts on forums and Instagram by insiders that there was a bunch of leaks by someone who knew someone who worked at AG and seen the visual book. There were quite a few details regarding Claudie and the Love Shack Fancy collab, the new historical PJs, as a bunch of the other future, probably this and next year things. Personally, I'm torn. I think the archaeology doll would have been really awesome and would have done well with the target market, but much better than a Harlem Renaissance doll will. I think most kids go through in Egypt, marine biology, or dinosaur phase. Could have released a set that would have crossed appeal for the other STEM things. And this I agree with, because I did go through a major Egyptian phase when I was about 7 years old in grade 1. I'm glad they're making another black doll and not another blonde classic mold doll. Though this character didn't have to be blonde, it sounded like she was partly based on Evelyn Beauchamp and easily could have had dark hair. That is also true. But then she would also kind of look like Rebecca if she had dark hair. And, I've talked about this before, is that I have problems with dolls that look similar to each other, that, appear relatively close to each other on the chronological timeline. So Samantha and Rebecca, I think, look very similar to each other, and they are very close to each other time-wise, so it just kind of throws me off. Okay, so I have a picture here from the same person who sent me that stuff on Instagram, and here is what it reads. So, some information on Claudie. Unfortunately, I could not find a photo or description of her appearance, so here's what I have about Claudie. She is indeed a 1920s character. Her neat outfit includes a dress, sweater, socks, boots, underwear, hair bow. Her accessories include a hat, necklace, bag, candy bar, gum, and notebook. She has a pet dog, which I feel like almost every historical character does. It repeatedly says Harlem insert, which I have discussed with others, and it makes us believe she is from the Harlem Renaissance, as rumored. It mentions a big-ticket item called Angelo's Bakery. This must be someone from her story. It has a lot of pieces, so that gives a brief overview. Or I'll give a brief overview. A counter with money, boxes, napkins, silverware, many different desserts, price signs, cooking items such as baking soda, pans, oven, paddle, rolling pin, whisk, eggs, bakery table. Listed is a jazz outfit, which includes a dress, tights, headband, and shoes, and a dress-up trunk, which is listed including a box, necklace, hat. Next listed is Claudie's cornet set, which includes a cornet, a case, and music. Not specific as to what they mean by music. She'll have a bed for sale, and that'll include a mattress, pillow, 2 throw pillows, bedspread, and stuffed bunny. She'll also have a nightstand with sale, which includes a book, lamp, glass, stuffed bunny, and tin. Lastly, she'll have PJs that include PJs, slippers, and a scarf. This doll isn't supposed to be released until fall 2022, so we probably have a photo of her in a long time. Or we'll probably won't have a photo of her for a long time. So essentially, my first reaction to reading this is that I feel like I'm having throwbacks to the days when Mattel first purchased American Girl in the early 2000s. Or maybe even if you were a fan of the Pleasant Company days of the 90s, then you might relate to this too, where the American Girls would have large collections. Now this girl has a lot of stuff in it. She has a big ticket item, she also has a bed, she also has a music set, a dress-up trunk. Like, there's so much going on with this doll, and I'm very, very excited. I do miss the big collections that American Girl used to have for their dolls, and I'm so glad they might be reverting back to it. Overall, I am very excited that American Girl is releasing a 1920s doll, and I do really hope that even if she is a Harlem Renaissance doll, that she still has some influences about Egypt, just because, that's what my thesis paper is on, and I love talking about Egypt, and I love talking about the complexities of Egypt and archaeology. It's very difficult to talk about all the complexities in a short video, but I could talk about it for hours, but I'm not going to, because this is a doll channel and not a archaeology, Egyptology channel. But just know that it's a huge passion of mine, and I'm very excited if they do decide to include at least some pieces from ancient Egypt. So what is your opinions on the new 1920s doll? Make sure to leave a comment down below letting me know what you think about the doll. What would you change about it? What are you hoping to see from the doll? Are you hoping that American Girl will release something different? Leave anything you want to share in the comments section below, because I would love to read it, and I'm pretty sure the people watching this video would love to hear your opinion. And thank you guys so much for watching my video. Make sure to go follow my Instagram, and I'll see you guys with another update, hopefully sometime soon.